I loved this two-parter. Rise of Apocalypse is easily the strongest X-Men 97 Season 2 has felt so far, and I'm so glad I waited to watch episodes 3 and 4 together. Episode 3 is basically one giant cliffhanger, but episode 4 pays it off so hard that the whole story feels less like a normal episode arc and more like the moment this season finally snapped into place. Because by the end, the X-Men don't just learn where Apocalypse came from, they help create him. I really liked episode 3. The episode goes all the way back to the origin of Apocalypse, when En Sabah Nur was still the slave in ancient Egypt, before becoming the conqueror we know. He gets freed by foreign raiders who are trying to overthrow the pharaoh and free the slaves. And right away, the show gives him this almost mutant Moses energy. You can see the potential for him to become something completely different. A liberator, a leader, maybe even the first X-Man. And that is what makes Magneto's role here so interesting. Having Magneto try to train and indoctrinate En Sabah Nur into becoming the first X-Man instead of Apocalypse is a really nice twist. It is also a great example of how even though Magneto is now trying to be a good guy, he still does things with good intentions that put him at odds with Xavier. He is not just evil Magneto anymore. He is growing, he is evolving, but he is still Magneto. And honestly, at this point in the episode, I was thinking that I would not be surprised if he eventually became a foe to the X-Men again. Not because he has stopped trying to be better, but because his whole arc feels like a tragic loop where he keeps trying to do the right thing, keeps failing, and every time the answer seems to be, if I had just gone further, if I had just killed, if I had just become the villain, maybe I would have succeeded. Basically, his original arc all over again. And honestly, I would be cool with that if they do it well. The twist with the Egyptians having future tech was also interesting. At first I was thinking maybe it was the Shi'ar Empire, because they mentioned people from the stars, and usually when X-Men stories deal with ancient aliens or cosmic civilizations, my brain goes to the Shi'ar. But episode 2 ends up going in a different direction with Rama-Tut, which was a really cool choice. En Sabah Nur ultimately becoming evil was not surprising, obviously, but it was still disappointing in the right way. You can see the path where maybe he becomes something better. You can see why Xavier and Magneto think he can be saved, but he still becomes Apocalypse. And honestly, at this point in the episode, my take on the time travel rules is that the X-Men were always part of the past and future they visited. It does not feel like they are changing history so much as fulfilling it. The events always seem like they would not have happened at all without their interference, which makes the whole thing feel more tragic. Because if that's true, then the prophecy of Apocalypse was always about the X-Men. They were always destined to help create him. Then episode 4 comes in, and wow, episode 4 feels like the season 2 version of episode 5 from season 1. Episode 5 was my favorite episode of the first season, and this feels like the closest season 2 has gotten to that same level of consequence and tragedy. Right off the bat, I'm going to say something that feels weird to say. I hope Magneto is dead for good. Not because I want him gone. I loved Magneto. I would argue the X-Men cannot exist at their best without Magneto as the counterbalance. But if X-Men 97 wants to make that choice, then that is a bold choice, and I want them to stick to their guns. Apocalypse literally vaporized him. He died 5,000 years in the past, turned to dust, blown away in the wind and sand, leaving behind only his crushed helmet. That is not a small fake-out death. That is huge. And part of why I want it to be real is because I am very afraid Apocalypse is eventually going to undo Season 1 Episode 5's biggest death and resurrect Gambit as one of his horsemen. I was also briefly afraid Apocalypse was going to make Magneto immortal by turning him into one of his horsemen, but that would have changed time, so for now, I hope the show actually means the death. The Rama-Tut reveal was also really satisfying. I only figured it out maybe 40 seconds before the show revealed it. Once I saw he had his own Cerebro, it hit me that he was not just some normal pharaoh from that time. Then I remembered Kang was a time traveler who spent time in ancient Egypt and posed as Rama-Tut. I don't really remember Kang and the X-Men having a lot of run-ins, but maybe those were just not the comics I grew up reading. Either way, I love the twist, and now I'm wondering if Apocalypse is really the big villain of the season, or if Kang is going to end up being the bigger threat. I could see a twist where Kang maybe helps the X-Men for a while, then ends up becoming even more powerful because of it. I also love the through line of SHIP being present across time, though I do wonder what happened to it after Magneto seemingly sent it through a black hole. My current prediction is that Magneto slowed down Apocalypse's rise by 5,000 years, and SHIP spends that whole time making its way back to Earth, only arriving in the 1990s for Apocalypse to show up in the original animated series. I haven't seen that show since I was a kid, so I don't remember exactly how SHIP shows up there. But X-Men 97 already tweaks the old animated canon slightly anyway, and I'm mostly okay with that because the two shows have such different tones. But overall, I loved this. It was awesome to literally follow Apocalypse from his birth and see where he came from. I also appreciate that no amount of Xavier speeches or Magneto speeches could sway him in the end. Not every monster can be talked down through therapy. Sometimes the person who could have been saved still chooses conquest. Ironically, it's literally like the Pharaoh in Egypt in the Bible. Moses gave him all the warnings, but he still chose evil. And that is what makes it tragic. En Sabah Nur had every chance to become something else. He had Xavier trying to reach his heart. He had Magneto trying to shape him into a mutant leader. He had the pain of slavery, the hunger for freedom, and the potential to become a liberator. But instead, he becomes Apocalypse. What a crazy pair of episodes. I can't wait to see what happens next. X-Men 97 continues to be absolute cinema. Hopefully Magneto is dead for good. Seriously. Let me know your thoughts, what you want to happen next, and please, no comic spoilers if you already know where this is going. And if you enjoyed this, like the video, comment, and subscribe. It really does help more people who want to talk about this show actually find the channel. Maybe this could become our own little institute for gifted fans. Except instead of training mutants, we argue about time travel, apocalypse, and whether Magneto is definitely, totally, absolutely dead this time. Alright, love you all. Bye.